Issue 71. It repeats the same dialogue from the end of the last issue, and Belle gets untied by Tails and her hands put back on. And he reveals that he didn't already know her hand could be moved around without being attached. Making it even more of a miracle that he saw this generically white robot hand and assumed it was hers, even though most of the main characters have white gloves, implying that's the most common color. I'm impressed that Belle got to be the one to make her hand like that instead of her creator. It makes a little more sense that she did it, because after all the bad things that happened to her and how dangerous her friends' lives are, she'd be paranoid enough to, while her creator wouldn't have seen the need. It's out of character for someone not from the American South to say y'all. Why would she be inclined to say it when she never would have heard it before? I think she's trying to sound cool, but that's not like her either. And she probably didn't hear Sandy Cheeks or Bunny Rabo say it. It wouldn't be like her to watch TV for fun instead of do nothing but be helpful. The chances are pretty slim that she'd see a person talking like that on TV get portrayed as cool. It's useful to have a short form for extreme gear, but at first it's confusing because it sounds like she's saying X gear, as in it used to be gear, or it used to be their gear. Why not just say airboards? She was helping to check the airboards before Clean Sweep stole them. Belle conveniently mentions that Clutch wore a greasy coat when she's not the type to judge by looks, and it'd be hypocritical of her to, and she wouldn't know anything about fashion. Just so Amy could find out that she saw Clutch, when before, she would have never asked if the leader of Clean Sweep was conveniently right there with the security guards for no reason, just so that she could tell Amy about him. Belle could have been written to describe everyone who bothered her without her muttering something under her breath and conveniently getting heard, because she'd want them to get in trouble with her friends. Her paranoid insistence on checking an airboard she'd have complete faith in worked out for the heroes. Which makes sense, she could have been wondering if Eggman was going to sabotage the airboard and want to unsabotage it. Out of nowhere, it turns out the airboarders are being told to participate in a children's game of dodgeball instead of just racing, which is more creative than the alternative. Of course, Evan Stanley wrote this. Still, this is blatant padding so far. Jet would be even more jealous of Surge if he knew she's been taking his role as Sonic's rival redundantly and making him look like a wimp by comparison. I'm enjoying seeing someone hate Surge and for a selfish reason instead of the typical hero versus villain fare. Surge blows her cover and threatens Tangle and Whisper because she wants to be the one to beat Sonic. Though it could just be seen as her being competitive. A fight breaks out that I would have had a reason to care about if I knew there was any chance of characters being injured for more than 1 second. Why is Mimic undisguised when he's going to attack Sonic? He knew there were cameras all over the place in this tournament, and he could have had a scary appearance that wasn't his actual one. He's just risking people realizing Silver was right. So he reveals Sonic because there was a convenient button on the outside of his armor to do that, even though someone could have pressed it earlier before Eggman would get the chance to find out who was leading Clean Sweep. I don't know why a bunch of mundane things get sent out of Sonic's vehicle. He's looking scared, but it's supposed to be comical? Eventually, the hero sees Sonic, and there's a fake out where it pretends Tango got hit by a falling boulder because she was too confused about why Sonic would want to race and wouldn't follow a rule, when Sonic's supposed to be an anti-hero who doesn't like rules just because they're rules. He said in Sonic and the Black Knight, "I go by my own rules." But to be fair, I only remember that game establishing that about Game Sonic. So how would the people outside of Camelot know that about him? Maybe he didn't tell Tangle about his rebellious nature because he couldn't think of a way to sound heroic when talking about it, and he thinks he'd look unlikable if he started bragging to her about an adventure even Amy didn't believe him about, out of complete nowhere. So, Sonic keeps the fact that he doesn't go by the rules a secret from everyone. Otherwise, all of his friends would not be surprised at him breaking a rule. Jet wonders why Sonic did that, and Wave talks as if she doesn't understand why someone would stop bad guys when she was the one who encouraged them to be a hero to get rid of the metal virus, which should have shown her why bad guys should be dealt with. It's like the writer didn't read that issue. The Rogues figure out because of Wave that Clean Sweep has to be evil because Sonic's opposed to them. Logically, everyone better figure this out then, if even people who hate Sonic do. It's entertaining that Jet's mad that Sonic figured out Clean Sweep is evil before he did. So he says they've got a new mission. Naturally, I see Surge complain to Kit because she saw Sonic. He must not want to provoke her by letting her know he hears her and thinks no one would believe him about what she said. Then I wonder why the writer had Surge's name be spelled wrong when either way it'd be pronounced the same way. So the effect would only be achieved by someone spelling your name wrong on paper. I get to see someone with horribly drawn John Grey eyes praise Surge for being a hero. So I like that, but I'm still suspicious of the writers for being nice to her when they only see her as a villain for Sonic to punch who deserves to suffer for being brainwashed. Otherwise, she would have gotten her family back at least, and Flynn would have said they'd always be villains. And remember how Shadow got over his amnesia over time? I have to assume some technology's in her brain to force her to keep having it. Once again, I'm hating that this is just a hope spot. She says she can't keep doing this because they don't deserve it. Thankfully, I get to see Kit encourage her to keep doing stuff that gets the crowd cheering for her because she enjoys it. And he implies that he likes that the world enjoys it. It'd be pointless and cruel to write this if it's gonna be like he never said this, because one writer wants this and the other doesn't. Jet and Metal Sonic and Shadow already fill a role as Sonic's rival. We don't need these two to try to kill Sonic again, in a context where everyone could find out about it. Eventually, the story wastes my time until Tangle says she can't give up on Sonic and she's scared of what Lanolin would do to Sonic if she told her he went to a race. Oh no, he went to a race, what a monster. Whisper explains that after what happened with Silver in the worst issue ever, she started recording with her mask again. She arbitrarily stopped recording with the mask after they fought Mimic, because just after that, she thought she didn't need to anymore. Even though she hadn't thought that earlier, so nothing would have changed her. She should have said she stopped recording video on her mask after her friends died. That's what I assumed, because she only used the recording for the sake of her friends so they could become better freedom fighters. Instead, it makes the past writing even worse by exposing a plot hole. As if she was in character, she would have recorded Mimic's treachery the first time and secretly shown it to Lanolin. I guess this means that when Sonic was attacking Lanolin, it was actually Mimic instead, because Sonic would be too interesting. Surge is shown petting Kit and getting the audience's hopes up that they're gonna earn being heroes. And we get to see Tangle hug Whisper as well, this time with her over the stupid hug aversion. So why don't we get to see such close friendships with Sonic and Tails? It's always Tangle and Whisper or the villains, like Rough and Tumble are closer than the heroes. Clutch starts wasting space in the comic. I like that he calls Sonic the idiot he is. He finally talks in a way that's actually menacing just to creepily pretend to be nice to reassure Mimic, even though he already knew he was fine with them hating Sonic for no reason. Mimic would hate Eggman too, and it's basically no reason to hate Sonic. He and Clutch are so detached from Sonic that the OCs met him before he did. I don't know why he even minds that Sonic's in the race. Shouldn't he just be happy that the ratings are up in the tournament, and isn't he making money off that? Issue 72. Surge foolhardily tells Clutch he quits to his face. Shouldn't she have known that he would use the fact that she was working for him against her? Why didn't Kit warn her this wouldn't go well? He stops being smart just so the scene could happen. He laughs at her because naturally he's just going to be able to threaten her into still working for him because he could just tell people she was working for him. They should have known that. He talks for 1 billion years about this. He should know they won't appreciate what he has to say. The only reason Surge doesn't just electrocute him to death with a single touch is because she's worried people would find out and she'd get in trouble. She's told to try to kill Sonic, which she wanted to do anyways, and would only be able to give up on that if her brainwashing wore off. But it'd be too nice to explain that. And everyone's gotta be an idiot so they don't realize that. And ironically, as soon as she's away from him, she temper tantrums about being told what to do. Shouldn't she know that Clutch would get dealt with by the heroes anyways, and Sonic's too merciful to let people know that she worked for him, because he kept refusing to give up on her? Sonic conveniently had a brown blanket in his vehicle to try harder to hide his appearance just in case. So Eggman must have kept it there just in case? I like that it reminds me of Sonic the Comic where he did the same thing. Eventually, Surge's lightning hits a car, and Storm catches it, and Jet wants to make himself look good as well by organizing a plan to save people. So he tells the people in the cars that are too far away to be able to hear him logically to get in line with their vehicles to avoid getting killed. He gets mad at Sonic, and Sonic ends up pulled into the vehicle of the event announcer, who is forced by the writer to talk menacingly even though he's actually on Sonic's side after all. It's amusing that he calls his flying car the bad investment. The scene's boring with a lot of wasted dialogue here. Sonic explains that it wasn't him who was causing trouble in issue 71, and the bird guy knew it all along. He's hidden from Jet by him and given some cocoa. The story bores me with more overflowing of worthless dialogue. I doubt anyone would put chili in hot chocolate. It's got beans in it. It turns out Donham helped the Chaotix out of nowhere, and the Chaotix had been investigating Clean Sweep for no reason, because the writers needed a Deus Ex Machina, even though the Chaotix didn't know Clutch was a leading Clean Sweep, and the job of a radio station talker and the job of a tournament announcer had nothing to do with being a police investigator. And the only reason anyone would think a company in charge of getting rid of Eggman's badniks and bases was evil without being crazy is if they were handed a copy of the script by a psychic wizard. So I guess that's what happened. Because they aren't paranoid schizophrenics, nobody knew Clutch was behind that company. They would only know if they Googled it, and they would never think to do that. What was the point of having all this boring narration? You could have just cut to the next panel. Sonic tells them that Amy and Tails are on the shuttle to be talked to about the Chaotix. It also turns out the bird guy can fix stuff because he's a brilliant engineer and not just a janitor now. Well, there are people with PhDs working as waiters, so it is possible that he only got his job because all the jobs for engineers were taken. How convenient that he happens to be friends with his boss enough to be here, even though I thought he hated him because his only indication of what he thought about him had him insult him for his ego. These two still aren't interesting enough to deserve being called their names. Sonic thanks them and flies away. Surprisingly, Kit's got the guts to hug Surge and reassure her, and nothing bad happens, even though she told him to not do that again. So the idea that she wouldn't act on her threat wasn't just bandit of mine after all. I'm proud of Kit for having an idea. Hopefully things are guaranteed to work out, because the writers remember this is a kids' comic, and that Kit's supposed to be smart, because every time he's had an idea, it's been a good one. Amy pushes Belle in front of the people dressed in costumes who are the mascots of Clean Sweep because she's supposed to tell Jewel what's been going on. Why would a company have a mascot? Let alone such goofy looking ones. She's told Jewel's busy and she notices that the mascot looks wrong. She gets grabbed and it turns out Jewel can't hear this because she's been listening to stuff on headphones. I know for a fact that headphones aren't that good at cancelling out noise. But it makes it look relatable that she does this. The costume gets unzipped by Tails, and Amy sees Ruff's tail, and they find out Ruff and Tomble were dressed as the mascots. Why didn't Amy attack them, interrupting them before they could call for backup? Something that's not in character for them to do anyways. These guys thought they could win in a fight with Sonic. Why does Amy lose her hammer the panel before they call? I thought it was only in RG where a hammer only exists because she wants a way to defend herself and it magically poofs into existence. But even RG didn't imply that her hammer would vanish just because she wasn't concentrating on it, and cause the story to end with her running away from people she was confidently bashing with a hammer earlier. Why can't Evan Stanley stop making Amy a coward? Why was she even fighting then? Why did Tails fly away? Too bad he's not Boom Tails, who was smart enough to carry a weapon at all times. What do they expect Jewel to do anyways? Beat up Clutch? Issue 73. Jewel calls out Clutch, being as dumb as Surge, thinking she alone could stop him when her entire character is about being a cautious, timid paperwork doer. She must be overcompensating for being too scared to tell people how to avoid a fire. She should have brought a weapon with her. She says she'll revoke his authority. And Clutch says it slipped her mind that the security guards here worked for him. How is she that dumb? It's not impressive of the villain when they're only being menacing and getting stuff over the heroes because they're idiots. Would people have preferred to have Tails get to talk to Jewel like we thought? She hugs Jewel, and the story has a bunch of boring, worthless dialogue for a while with nothing happening. The tournament race could have started right away, no problem. Tangle lets the cat out of the bag for Lanolin, and because she's trying to protect the Phantom Rider, Surge shocks her. Hopefully people are thinking she's just doing this because she's loyal to Lanolin, not her. She gets hit and starts falling, but holds something and exposes Sonic's disguise. Kit wonders if Surge is alright, as I have to put up with seeing her look even worse than usual. I don't know why this was approved. She says on camera that her boss wanted her to destroy the Phantom Rider, but makes it clear she's not happy about it. So this could go either way. We don't know how people feel about Shadow. Rough and Tumble have to be hidden from by someone with a hammer for whatever reason. Ruff gets told that the kids went the other way, and Amy doesn't seem to realize that the bird guy was on her side. You'd think that them all screaming seconds after the bad guys left would cause them to come back to them immediately. He eventually tells them he's looking for the Chaotix, and Belle says she knows where people would get locked up in here. The engine room. And she knows the passwords to open the vaults because she works here, even though I thought she worked somewhere else. They find the Chaotix who are logically napping, and there's way too much boring dialogue no one would care about. Eventually, Vector says he got evidence of clean sweeping evil on a USB, which is cool of him, but an utter deus ex machina that he thought to do this. And they get let out. There's no reason these people wouldn't be able to see Clutch right away. There wouldn't be fog here. I have to assume the vault door was set up to tell Clutch it was opened as soon as it was opened, just in case. He must have thought it'd be Surge who'd do it instead of Belle, because he had no way of knowing Belle would be found. So the story ends with Clutch and a bunch of equally pathetic mooks threatening people who beat armies of robots no problem. It just has to end there because of all the stupid padding with dialogue I don't care about. I thought this arc would be done by now. This issue is by Evan Stanley, and I was fine with it as a whole despite it being bloated with padding. But that seems unavoidable for a story in this comic. Exactly what I'd expect happens for the plot in general. Sonic gets exposed, leading the rogues to plot against Clutch. And Bill explains who the real bad guy is. It was interesting that a dodgeball tournament was involved, and that we never got to see who won it. That's because usually sports stories are a boring waste of time where the winners are always the most predictable ones. Instead, the story forgot it had dodgeball in it right away, but it just being there was creative enough to impress me. The plot was so predictable that the only reason it's not something you should skip is that it was sweet to see Surge's scene where she was praised as a hero and was insecure because of Starline not praising her enough and wanted to be a hero. Which felt like it made sense because she wanted the glory, which she wanted from the very beginning. This issue by Evan Stanley was mostly just a boring wasting of my time with an exciting part in the sky because of lightning and jet, but it was all surrounded by an abundance of not needed dialogue. All that happened that mattered was Sonic got rescued by someone who just so happened to be driving near him. It would have made just as much sense if it was some random people who rescued Sonic because he's Sonic. They'd never stop liking him. Then Amy gets warded away from Jewel by Rough and Tumble, even though she was totally gung-ho about bashing them in with a hammer. And now she's running away from them when the guards they call for backup are miles away from them. She could beat them up and then go to the door in seconds. They're too restricted by their costumes right now to attack her. We didn't even need it to be Rough and Tumble. I don't think I needed to see all that talking around Sonic. It could have just had one panel of some guy I never saw before giving him a thumbs up and saying he'll take him to safety. And then cut everything out until the Amy scene. I don't know if it's the writers or Sega, but why would anyone feel a compulsive need to have every arc last a very specific amount of issues? This issue by Evan Stanley was about Surge exposing the Phantom Rider as Sonic, but also saying on camera that her boss wanted her to destroy him. But at least the fact that she said he wanted him destroyed and she stopped at exposing him should prove to the audience that she's not on Clutch's side anymore. Maybe it wasn't as mean-spirited as I was dreading, but I hate that the story ended before I could know for sure, because nothing but boring dialogue pads out the rest of the issue, which involves nothing but the heroes reuniting with each other, so they could eventually know to free the Chaotix. I come to a Sonic story to see exciting scenes from stuff happening, and I just barely got one scene of that. I can't like the issue when it got nothing but boring after the first scene and ended before showing me what I wanted to see. Not making clear with dialogue how the audience interpreted what Surge said. It could have just gotten her in trouble for inexplicably admitting she was working for someone murderous, which would have been an idiot ball for even more cruelty to her. A whole page could have been removed from the scene in the engine room so there was room for one more page before focusing on Amy. We all know the heroes are gonna win, so I'm not really reading the arc for them. I'm only interested in the arc because of Surge. And she's just coming off as an afterthought in the writers' heads when it ends like this.